He was hiding from the battle when God called him a warrior. The Midianites had turned life into survival. Every time Israel planted crops, Midian came. Every time they worked, Midian took. Harvest season had become robbery season. Families hid in caves, villages lived in fear. An entire nation had forgotten what victory felt like. And in the middle of that oppression, a man named Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress. Now you have to understand, a winepress was built for grapes, not wheat. He was doing farm work in a hiding place, trying to save what little he had, trying not to be noticed or to lose another harvest. He wasn't planning a revolution, training an army. He was simply trying to survive while hiding. Then the angel of the Lord appeared, and his first words were startling. "The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." Welcome to Light to Shadows, stories from scripture that shine light on the quiet, the overlooked, and the courageous. Here we reveal how God moves in hidden places so that your faith can step into the light. Feel free to subscribe and walk with us where small acts become kingdom turns. Let's get back to this story, shall we? "The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." These words were said to a man in hiding, trying not to be seen, and to a man who felt anything but brave. Because when Gideon answered, he didn't sound like a warrior. In fact, he sounded disappointed. He said, "If the Lord is with us, why then is all this befalling us? Where are the miracles? Where are the stories our fathers told us? Where is the God who brought Israel out of Egypt?" His words revealed something many people never admit out loud. He believed in God's past and struggled with God's present. He had heard about deliverance, he just couldn't see it. And honestly, standing in the winepress looking at stolen harvests and broken expectations, who could blame him? But God wasn't discouraged by Gideon's questions, because heaven had not come to inspect his confidence. Heaven had come to reveal his identity. The Lord looked at him and said, "Go in this thy might." The might God saw, even when Gideon couldn't. Then Gideon exposed what was really happening inside him. "My family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." There it was, the label, his own label. "I am the least, I am the weakest, I am the insignificant one, the person nobody expects anything from." It's amazing how often God and people can be looking at the same person and see completely different things. Gideon saw weakness when God saw leadership. Gideon saw limitations when God saw potential. Gideon saw a frightened farmer when God saw a deliverer. And neither changed their description because of what was currently visible. The difference was perspective. Gideon was looking at himself through his circumstances. God was looking at him through purpose. That's why the Lord never argued with Gideon's insecurity. He simply answered, "Surely I will be with thee." Because Gideon's future was never going to be built on his strength. It was going to be built on God's presence. The story was never about finding courage inside himself. It was about believing what God had said. The remarkable thing is that nothing changed immediately. The Midianites were still there. The oppression was still very real. The winepress was still a winepress, but a word had entered the situation. And sometimes that is where transformation begins. Not when circumstances change, but when identity changes. The moment God called Gideon a mighty man of valor, he was speaking to who Gideon would become. Because God speaks from destiny, while humans speak from experience. We describe ourselves by our history. God describes us by purpose, by our calling, by what He has created us to do. When humans talk about what they've done, this is why Gideon's story matters. Many people are waiting to feel brave before they obey, waiting to feel qualified before they step forward, waiting to feel strong before they answer God's call. But Gideon teaches us something different. The call came while he was hiding. The identity came before the victory. The name came before the evidence. God called him a warrior before he had ever won a battle. And perhaps that is because heaven's labels don't come from your performance, they come from your design. So, here's the question the story lives with you. What name have you been answering to? The one your fears gave you? The one your failures gave you? The one your past gave to you? Or the one that God has spoken over your life? Somewhere between the winepress and the battlefield, Gideon had to decide whose voice would define him. And every one of us faces the same choice. Will you continue to live from your limitations or from God's declaration? Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't the victory that comes later. The greatest miracle is believing God when He calls you mighty while you're still standing in a hiding place. It's been a pleasure having you here today, and we hope to see you yet again on our very next episode. But until then, grace and peace be multiplied unto you. Bye for now. Lighter Shadows is brought to you by Lesavaka Evangelicals, advocates of truth. See you next time.